Hello and welcome. My name is Tucker Johnson, and I am your host today as we experience NIMSY Live, where we talk about the latest and greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, culturalization, and all that fun stuff that global companies need to delight their international customers, or at least not to piss them off too much. On this program, we invite guests who like to have fun and have some value to add for our audience of globalization professionals. I'm always eager to provide a platform to those with a good story or a good data set. So let us know if there are any topics you'd like covered or guests we should reach out to for future episodes. If you aren't already subscribed to or following NIMSY Insights, now is your opportunity to do so. If you follow NIMSY Insights on LinkedIn, then you will be one of the first people to know when we publish new localization industry research or when we schedule new live events like this, so that you can sign up ahead of time and get those reminders directly in your notifications on LinkedIn. Speaking of events, we have an upcoming event today. We've got another double feature today where we will be talking about the emotional toll of keeping up, specifically in regards to the proliferation of artificial intelligence. What does it mean to have that human in the loop? So join us directly after this event if you'd like to hear more or engage in the conversation about that. Quick introduction to today's topic. Today we are going to be talking about and exploring a realm that holds immense significance in shaping the identity of an entire continent. Africa, with its rich tapestry of languages and cultures, faces a big challenge: the dwindling numbers of literary works published in indigenous languages. While the spoken word can easily be forgotten, the written word has the power to immortalize a language. And at the heart of this preservation lie three pillars: speakers, writers, and publishers. As we dive into this multifaceted world of African language publishing, we are going to aim to shed light on the role of publishers in safeguarding and promoting the linguistic heritage of this vast and diverse continent. And to do so, we are going to be pulling from the June issue of Multilingual, where there is an article in there called "The 5 Strategies for African Publishers," and it's co-authored by Christian Elongué and Sylvain Agbolo, who are joining me today. I will introduce them now. Christian is one of the co-authors of this article, and I'm thrilled to welcome him to the show. He's a passionate advocate for the promotion of African languages, especially in the fields of education and publishing. His insights challenge the status quo and inspire hope for a future where African languages can find their rightful place in literature. Thank you for joining us, Christian. We also have...
Thank you, Johnson.
Welcome. We also have Sylvain, the other author of this article. Sylvain Agbolo is not only passionate about African languages, but he also plays an integral role as a freelance translator and project manager, seamlessly bridging communication between English and French and other languages. His expertise doesn't stop there, though. Sylvain is a proud member of the European Association for Machine Translation, reflecting his commitment to advancing technology in the realm of linguistics. He has a master's degree in translation and new technologies, and he brings a fusion of tradition and innovation to the field. Furthermore, he is the founder of the Multilingualism Week conference. Sylvain has fostered a platform for dialogue, collaboration, and awareness on the importance of linguistic diversity. Welcome. That is quite the impressive resume you both bring to the show, gentlemen. Did I leave anything out?
Not at all on my side.
Well, let's dive right into it here. Once again, thanks for joining the show. I want to go to the recent article that you published in Multilingual. And for those of you that are following along at home, this article was published in the June issue of Multilingual, and we are on page 7, where we're looking at 5 strategies for African publishers. And as I was reading this article, I was very interested in the take that you had on this issue. I've had other folks on the show talking about indigenous languages, African languages, but you're really speaking to publishers and what publishers can do. As we mentioned in the introduction, there's the readers, the writers, and the publishers. And you go through 5 different tactics, strategies, ideas for the publishers. So to kick us off here, I wanted to read a quote from the article about the promotion of African languages. You say, therefore, when it comes to the promotion of African languages, the number of people able to write and publish regularly in those languages is also key. But when one looks at the book industry in Africa, one can easily notice that the number of books published in foreign languages outshines those published in regional languages. It's easier to find a Shakespeare in Africa than a local author. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce with my English tongue. Um, that is sad yet true. The reality calls for a more strategic and holistic valorization of African languages through any possible medium, especially in education and publishing. Christian, why don't you start us off here? Kind of outline for our listeners the challenge that is faced and summarized in this quote here. Um, why aren't there more African languages being in print out there?
Yes, thank you so much, Johnson. And thanks again to Nimzi Insight for this opportunity of sharing more about this publication that has been done by Multilingual. So, coming about the topic of the day, why is it that we don't have enough African languages in print? I believe it's mostly about the issue of accessibility, in the sense that many Africans know how to write the language, but very few actually know how to write it. And we believe that one of the reason is that you know um, some languages are not yet codified, and there are a lot of efforts that aims or contribute towards the codification and the digitization, and use of languages using technology. And that's one of the reasons why some publishers usually find it difficult, because if you want something to be in print, usually it has to be digital, because the printing is a conversion of the digital into paper. So because of that difficult access, or the difficult availability of resources, or technology in African languages, most publishers find it difficult to publish a book directly in an indigenous African languages. So that's the main reason. There are many other that I believe Sylvain might want to share also.
Please. Sylvain, what's your thoughts?
Um, yeah, thank you so much once again, Johnson, for this opportunity. And globally, or let me say holistically, my brother Christian Elongué has done justice to the question. And so the only few take that I'll add to it is mainly just to reiterate what he said, that it's because one, I think um, many factors must be put in place for this to be done. And that is why we came up with the trinity of promoting languages, which is the speakers, the writers, and publishers. And in the case of African languages, publishers we saw, or when we did our research, are very key, or their main let me say, partners to the promotion of African languages. In this case, the only challenge that we face in Africa today is that one of the challenge the publishers told us is that uh, when books are printed in African languages, people do not really want to purchase them because they cannot read them. Most of them do not read them. So there's no ready market for the books published in African languages. That is one.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think that there is a remedy to that.
Okay.
When we prioritize our indigenous languages, then there will be a need to print books in in our African languages. Recently, I was interviewed at the Directorate General for Translation at the European Parliament in Brussels, and then they asked me what we are doing when it comes to the promotion of African languages. And I told them that, okay, in Africa, usually in our educational system, we use English to teach mathematics, science, and all of that. And so all the books we have are already by GES using the Ghana Education Service as an example, is only in English. However, if we are able to put all these science, maths, and everything in African languages, you see that we will yield more results because the student will be able to understand very fast and be able to relate to what we are saying. So government plays a role. They need to push when it comes to the prioritization of languages. Should they do that, then publishers will see the ready market. Just take, for instance, that the Ghana government says that, okay, all math books from age one, or let's say class six or year one, as it is in other countries, to year six should be in Akan, for instance.
Mhm.
You see that publishers will rush to do so. So that is just a few thoughts to share on the topic. Yeah.
No, very, very good points. And for those of listeners that aren't aware out there, is that the just to reiterate what you're saying, my understanding is that English is really the main language of instruction for children and students in a lot of different places around the world because
Exactly.
just
Exactly.
so I mean, in a way, you could say you have your let's say your first language is Akan,
Yeah.
right? It's a
Yeah.
tree. You speak a country for your first languages.
Exactly.
But in a
Yeah.
way, one could argue that that's your first spoken language, your first
Exactly.
written and reading language, your native reading
Yeah.
language could be
Mm.
argued that it's actually English because that's what you're taught
Yeah.
in the schools,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this is a challenge. And we're talking about what publishers can do today, but this is a challenge that's just multifaceted and
Yeah.
touches on a lot of different areas around society. So it's not just like, hey, if we change these one or two things, it's going to fix the problem. It's more of a mindset shift and a change. Um, and you know, I'm I'm eager to jump into that conversation. But before we do that, let's go to the points that you outlined in the article. The article is five things publishers can do to help promote African languages. So five different strategies, and I'll just read them out loud here for the sake of our listeners who can't see the screen right now. So, number one, African publishers should bet more on writers who write in African languages. Number two, creating more dedicated publishing houses focusing exclusively on African languages. Number three, network with African language translators for the bilingual translation of books. Four, organize writing and reading competitions in African languages. And five, engage policymakers to invest in and support more indigenous publishing initiatives. So these are, and I'm hoping we'll have time to get through all of these today. But let's start with this first one. African publishers should bet more on writers who write in African languages. What does that look like in practical terms? I'm very interested in like on the ground practical terms. What steps can publishers take in order to do this?
Um, okay, thank you so much, Johnson. So I basically believe that there is no gain without pain. We all know the relevance of speaking African languages. Ask any African, is it good to speak African language? They will say, yay,
Yeah, yeah.
but when it comes to what needs to be done, then people realize that because of the barrier that are in between, it kind of make many to be discouraged, which means that ultimately for things to move, some will have to pay the price for others. And we believe that publishers are well positioned, to contribute towards that. There are some who have been doing very well, like Kugi Wachongo, in terms of sacrificially and intentionally choosing to consistently publish his books, in, at least his local language or mother tongue. So when we talk about betting, like it's a way, as you have said, is an issue of mindset that we choose that no matter whether there is a large market for that language or not, we want that language to be available. In I believe there is a two-way. There is one approach where sometimes we see a demand, right? And then we provide the solution. But there are also cases where you create the product and you expect that the product being there, the demand is going to grow. Because sometimes for many, the lack of access to resources in African language impedes the learning of those languages.
Hmm.
Some people, if I take my case, I'm from Cameroon and I live in Ghana. I really want to learn to speak the local languages, but it's so difficult to even find learning material in the most popular language in Ghana, Twi.
Yeah.
It's difficult to find pure, like fully a French to English dictionary in Twi. It's difficult. So having access to learning material in those local languages is hard, very, very hard. And it's a commitment which will come at a price, to make that
Yep.
available. Of course, that price will be not just in terms of willingness, but also in terms of economical
Mm-hmm.
engagement that will have to be done. And this is where we believe that it's important for publishers to stop looking at the same source. Till now, most publishers are expecting the government to bring tax incentive or to create an enabling environment for them to do or to make things move. But we have seen situations in different countries where sometimes we overpass the government and the government join later when they see
Mm-hmm.
how things are moving forward.
Yeah.
So how can this work? Money is at the core of the publishing game or the publishing industry, because to publish enough books to make it available on the national market will require funding or money. In Africa, we have private wealthy individual, people whose high net worth as individuals are very high. Some country you call them economic operator, or economic leaders. We should start engaging them in the conversation. We should start inviting them at the table for them to understand that they may be rich, yes, but if they don't invest in preserving their cultural heritage, which could be preserved through writing in their local tongue or mother languages, they go the long risk of having children that will be, culturally illiterate, children that will be identity, confused because they don't have enough of component that bring them back to their language. And we
Mm.
know that language is one of the key vehicle of transmission, of diffusion, of communication of our culture.
Mm.
So this is one way that as they decide to bet, they should also decide to change the approach and look at alternative ways of mobilizing resources to move forward with the publishing agenda of local language. There is much more, but I will stop here for now. Thank you.
No, that's great. Just to read a quote from your article on this, you mentioned that one radical but costly decision can be made by publishers is to either institutionalize publishing houses or at least introduce an in-house unit that focuses only on the publication of content in African languages. This is a sacrificial and a financial risk. However, for the greater cause of promoting and preserving African languages, it is worth the price. And what I find very interesting about your takes on this is I've talked a lot before. I hear a lot like, oh, the government needs to step in, and there needs to be funding from the government and NGOs and stuff like this. And you're saying, yeah, that's fine, but sometimes those things move slowly and they're very risk adverse. So publishers have an opportunity to take the lead here. Publishers that are passionate about preserving their cultural heritage in language, then they can actually take the first step, and maybe the governments will follow, which is really an interesting spin on this conversation. I have to ask you, are you familiar with Adi Koulibaly and Emmanuel over at Bolingo? I'm sure you are, right? You're all in Accra. Are you in Accra
Yes,
too,
please.
Sylvain?
Yeah.
No, I'm in Spain.
Oh, you're in Spain. Okay. Well, Christian, at least you're in Accra with them. Well, I think Addie is over in like Rwanda right now, setting up an
Yeah.
office.
Mhm.
Yeah, but so you're familiar with the work that they're doing over at Akan News?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Yes,
Yeah.
please. We are familiar with the work that they are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Local
Exactly. Exactly.
local people, local businesses like Bolingo
Initiatives. Yeah.
Consult, creating these initiatives for the purposes of preserving their languages. And I talked to
Yeah.
them not too long ago, and it's they've already, from my understanding, anyways, like other people from other countries, African countries, are talked to them about like, hey, how can I replicate this for my
Exactly.
languages? So that's what you're talking about when we're talking about
Exactly.
being a leader in this space.
Exactly. exactly. And ID may not be on the table, but I believe that when she started, it cost her something.
Oh, I'm sure.
It cost her, yes, it cost her time
Yeah.
for her company to lay aside time that could have been spent on more financially profitable, initiative to focus on building the Akan News website, But at the end, even though the website may not be yet, I don't know if it is already, but I suppose it may not yet be financially profitable, but at least the fact that the initiative has been started,
Hmm.
you know, it makes it is already sparking interest. It's already
Well,
sparking other initiative in other country,
and it's creating
and
demand, right? Because people
exactly,
didn't know
exactly,
that they wanted to read the news in
exactly,
Fanti.
in their local,
And now
exactly.
that they can, they're like, I want more of this. So that's going to bring
Mhm.
other competitors. It's going to bring other publishers to the market.
Exactly, exactly. And that's exactly what we do expect from publishers, to also take that lead,
Yeah.
in making more books available in local languages and exploring alternative ways of making that a reality by not only depending on the government as usual.
Yeah, and well, you speak of government, and let's go back to our list here. Hold on, give me a sec. I'll pull it up. We've talked about how African publishers can bet more on writers, and creating dedicated publishing houses. Um, let's go to the policymakers. I'm going to skip ahead here. Engage policymakers to invest in and support more indigenous publishing efforts. Because, yes, we are talking about the publishing houses right now, but you also make the point in your article. It says authorities should stop regarding national languages as dialects, and intellectuals should be more involved with the development of such languages. Like, what are some of the things that governments can do to help promote this, even if that may not be the focus of your writings?
Yes, I believe that many government theoretically are already doing well in the sense that in many or most African countries we have at least a policy that encourage the use of local languages. Most countries in Africa have that already in place. I think the issue is more the level of the enforcement. How do we move from
Mm,
policy to practice? How do
yeah,
we move from planning to to reality? And this is where we believe that government should start making practical steps by allocating a budget for it. And I believe the issue is at the level of perspective.
mm-hmm,
What we do is a product of how we think. If we don't invest enough in African languages as policymakers, it's usually because they see that maybe the return on investment is not high, and they think that there are maybe other priorities which are more important. But the thing is, when we look, the return may not be immediate, but when we look on the long term, the return is greater than any other investment. Why? Because cultural diplomacy,
mm-hmm,
you know the ability of selling your culture, the ability of attracting others through the cultural product and service that you produce, is the number one factor that generates billions of dollars across the world. We all know Nollywood. We all
yep,
know the American movie industry. Why is it that it is well known? Because they are selling the American dream, and the American dream is sold through a language. When we go to India realized that they also started investing locally in promoting their local languages, promoting their culture. And now you see a lot of Indian movie who have been exported across the world. So cultural industry, or the cultural and creative industry, you know, are the number one industry that generate more than any other industry in the world, sometimes even more than natural resources. Because in the cultural industry, we have the music, we have theater, we have sport, we have architecture, we have all of those things where culture is the number one source of creation, and the language is, I think, the primary artifact, like the first visible or tangible way of approaching a culture. So it's paradoxal for our policymakers in Africa to expect our languages To expect Africa to grow by neglecting languages is kind of choosing the wrong priority, because you miss the entry door and you want to pass through the window, is going to be very, very difficult. So I think that there is a need of changing that perspective by understanding the strategic relevance of African language, how they contribute not just in promoting our identity, but also in creating businesses. Let's imagine that we have in Swahili being adopted as an official languages across Africa, as an official language across Africa, is going automatically to create new jobs, because professional speakers of those languages, will be able of getting translation job, transcription job for the movie industry, creating website, localization market, which is also growing, and so many other opportunities that are going to be created. The more we use foreign languages, the more we contribute to the growth of the country that hosts that language. What do I mean by that? The more we use Chinese, the more the power of China is growing.
Yep.
The more we use Russian, the more the power of Russia is growing. Because as you use the language, you can also buy the book that has that language. And that book that you buy, the profit of it goes back to the Russian author. And the less we speak our language, the more we impoverish ourselves. So that shift of mindset is critical. And this is where number two, I believe that we should stop presenting the relevance of African languages through rhetoric only. We should move from rhetoric to analytics, data, evidence,
Okay.
in the sense that it's important for anyone doing language advocacy to bring figures, because policymakers, I believe, they may be slow to understand this, but I believe that if they have concrete facts, if they have evidences, on how a language has contributed to increase maybe job creation, they'll be more willing to explore it. So there should be more study that comes with practical facts, case study on how languages are contributing to local development. And this can be used as advocacy material to convince policymakers. And finally, the third element I believe is important to do this is to invite them on the table. It will be good that when we have conversation as such, that representative of the policy making space or the government space or the cultural sector in one ministry, that they are in the table, so that they can also hear how conversations are moving and know what is actually being discussed by practitioners. Because we sometimes have policy makers or decision makers who are not practitioners, in the sense that they make policy about things that they really don't have an updated perspective about it. The perspective that many are having is what they had when they joined the office, but they have not been following. They have not been they have not been following the trend to know where things are moving. So it's important to keep them updated, or to do targeted advocacy, with policymakers and decision makers. There is much more, and I believe Sylvain will share on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Sylvain, I'm interested to hear your
Yeah.
perspective on this.
Okay. Taka, just to give another point on that same question, just to give you a practical example. So in Tanzania, the Swahili language has been adopted as a language of instruction from year 1 all the way to year 6. And this is what we are talking about. And this is what Christian elaborated beautifully. We need to stop talking and move to action. And Christian has given us a lot of benefit when it comes to social benefit, when it comes to economic benefit, and all of that. So in Tanzania, Swahili is used as a medium of teaching and learning. With this, we did a raw research when teaching children in English. And we realized that when you teach them in English, they find it very difficult to understand from the beginning. However, when you teach them, let's say mathematics in their local language, they easily understand. So we use like mathematics, for instance, and we said, I will translate it after I speak it. It's an offer anka bako. Now the anka bako so come on, a saying. Ebe mienu. So to translate this back is when you take one orange and you add another orange, how many oranges will you have? Then the children say two. But when we approached it with English, orange was not really familiar to them because that is not the language they speak. That is not the terms they use at home.
Yeah,
You get it? So
and it's just like from a learning and development perspective, like it's just perfect timing because like yesterday I had a really fascinating conversation with an expert in the area of e-learning. And there's a whole psychology around like how people can retain what they learn. And in order to retain what they learn, it needs to be relevant to them. And if you're speaking, literally speaking another language, like you can have the translation for an orange, but it's not as culturally relevant for them. So the retention's not going to be there.
Exactly. Growing up in school, we usually recite something like A for apple,
Yeah.
B for ball. As at the time I was reciting that, I never knew what an apple was. I only saw it in pictures. And I actually thought, okay, maybe it's something for the Westerners or non-Africans and all of that. It was not really relevant to me at that point.
Yeah.
So we repeated it for several years before I could. So it was like you just chew it and you pull, and it does not hit you. So it's a constant, deliberate action that our president or government policymakers must take. In Zimbabwe, for instance, they have 16 official languages. 16 official languages.
Yep.
And because of, unfortunately, let me just put this here, because of the war happening in Mali, French is no longer an official language of Mali, but a working language. And so Bambara becomes one of the predominant languages is used. And just to bring one initiative, beautiful initiative done by Bolingo, there was an advert by ECG, which is the electric company of Ghana. It was done in English. Meanwhile, most people do not speak English or do not understand English. So in speaking to the natives, you cannot just only use English to tell them to be or to educate them on paying their bills, their electric bills. And so Bolingo took the step to transcribe and do the voiceover of this advert in Ga, in Chi, in most of the Ghanaian languages. And that hit me because I could hear it in my language. And then my mother, who, let me say, she speaks English, though, and understand English, though, but if it were not the case, she wouldn't have understood and would not even pay the tax in the first place. But because she heard it in her language, she will make efforts to do so.
Yeah. Well, there's a return on investment right there, right?
Exactly. And so next time, if I see this, I will actually see this as an opportunity. Okay, that I am the CEO of a company and I really want to get to the indigenous. Seeing what Bolingo has done, I'll just call them and said, okay, Bolingo, I saw what you did for the ECG, that is the electric company of Ghana, and I want to replicate the same thing for my product, which I really want on the market, targeting the local people. And you see that lots of people will buy into that project or will buy the product I'm selling to them. So there is huge, we are just not seeing it.
Need someone to take that first step, right?
Exactly.
There's an appetite for it. Just someone needs to go out there and do it, right?
Exactly.
I'm watching the comments here, and Ricky. Oh, where are my comments? Well, they're here somewhere. Trust me, Ricky Kalu. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kalu Media down in South Africa. Ricky's got a bunch of different stuff that he does down there, but one of them is Kalu Media. It's a media localization company, and they've got studios and all of this stuff. But he's making a really good point here in the comments. It says there's a shortage of data in general within African localization and language usage, and I wanted to bring this up because Christian, you, I believe, were making the point about we need to turn towards making data-based arguments.
Yeah.
And I had the same thought as you were saying that, as Ricky had. That's a challenge. right? Because
Mhm.
there's not a lot of data out there. What's the solution for that? What's the path forward? How do we get more data? Well, first of
Yes, we
all,
get
well,
money.
I talked about this with Adi, right? I
Yeah,
believe in the manual, and it's the way that you get more data is by publishing in those local languages. Because right now there's nothing published, so there's no data,
mhm,
right? So,
exactly,
but
exactly.
I want to hear your thoughts, though, of course.
Yes, yes. So one way of getting data about those languages, as you have said, is basically to start creating content and also assessing what has been done already to use it for advocacy, as I was previously indicating. There is a lot which is actually being done in countries such as South Africa. South Africa has, I think, in Africa they have one of the strongest national language development program. And they have this program known as the Indigenous Language Publishing Program, where it's basically the government having through the South African Book Development Council, they are stimulating the growth and the development of the book sector by encouraging the publishing in local languages. You know, and what they do is that they have supported it by funding it up to 50% of the cost of publishing a book. What does it mean? That if a publisher in South Africa want to publish a book in any of the nine, I think it's 11 official languages, official local languages, they will have a subsidized to up to 50% on the cost of book production.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of stimulate more publishers to be willing to do it. Then how is data intervening at this level? Data is intervening in the sense that it's important to assess the effectiveness and the economic benefit of such program. How does it
Mm.
contribute to increase literacy, numeracy, and the quality of education in the country? And that data then can be used to then justify why the government must continue in doing that, because we all know how foundational learning is one of the key issue, or one of the key
Yeah.
challenges in Africa. According to statistics from UNESCO, the last time I saw it, I was still shocked, in the sense that they still indicate, I don't know if it is exactly true, that up to 9 children in Africa before the age of 10 are still not able of reading. 9 out of 10 children are still not able of fully reading and doing mathematics, which is quite critical. And then we believe that one, not that I believe, I know that one of the main barrier, if we put aside other issues such as maybe access to education itself, I believe one of the main barrier is the language of instruction. You can't teach people, especially in rural area, in a foreign language, when the languages that they are speaking at home is
Yeah.
different. It makes things more difficult. It makes things more complicated. It makes simple concept become complex,
All right.
you
Yeah.
know. And Check Anta Diop have started a lot of linguistic research on the effectiveness of learning in local languages. And he has made many evidences available which justify that learning mathematics in Wolof was far more efficient and effective than learning it in French. And following Check Anta Job, many other, linguist researchers have also proven the same fact. So I believe it's important to use those evidences already, but in a more strategic way for advocacy. And the advocacy here must not just be targeting the government. Let's explore other actors. Let's explore other way. I've talked first about the private sector. I think now with the digital era, and digitalization, and the fact that the world has become a global market, it has even made things easier, in the sense that we can tap into the power of diaspora. We have a strong African diaspora that is contributing to Africa development more than development aid. What do I mean by that? There is what we call remittance. The money that Africans living in the diaspora are sending back home. I believe in 2020, reports were indicating that it was huge. It was huge than all the money that all the
Yep.
country who are supporting Africa in terms of aid were giving. Which means what? Africa is not poor. There is money. And what has been traced,
That's
that
true.
is just the data that is available. What
Yeah.
about people who are sending money without using official transaction, or official
Mm-hmm.
financial institutions. So
Mm-hmm.
it's huge.
Yep.
It's huge. So the question is, how do we tap into that to
Yeah.
promote cultural relevant projects like the promotion of African language?
Well,
One way is through crowdfunding. Yes, please.
well, I didn't mean to interrupt. You're on a roll, but you bring up the topic of the diaspora out there, and
Mm,
there is a big appetite for. I mean, just using Ghana since you're in Ghana right now,
mhm.
for Ghanaians living abroad to have access to their local language or to their
Exactly.
native language, because
Exactly.
if I'm born in Cameroon, speaking my mother tongue, and then moved to Germany, and I'm speaking German every day because I'm never hearing my own mother tongue, then that's not good. Let's just say, right? That gets to a person
Yeah,
after a while.
yeah.
Exactly.
There's comfort that comes from having that access. And if I move abroad as an American, if I move to Japan and I have to speak Japanese all day, which I don't, first of all, I can go on the internet and find a bajillion resources for me. I never have to be without my native tongue. But that's not true for the African diaspora.
Exactly. And this is where, the proposition that I was sharing of exploring alternative ways of, doing things, crowdfunding.
Mhm.
I've seen self-published author mobilizing a lot of financial resources through Indiegogo, through a Kickstarter. Like there are a lot of crowdfunding platform out there where I've seen many successful, literary initiative being funded when there is a clear story, a clear argument, a clear reason why the project is needed. People are willing to give freely,
Mhm.
freely. So why are African publishers or writers not exploring that venue?
Yep.
Why are we not, developing project? Hi, hey guy, we want to make 10,000 books or 1 million books in Swahili, and we need 10 million, or let's say $1 million. Let's give.
Yep.
If we are giving $5, it will require less than 1 million people to do it, and it will get done fast.
Mm-hmm.
All for any crowdfunding campaign to be successful, it requires two things: the credibility of the person leading the campaign, you know, and the messaging or the story. If the story
The
is well
story.
crafted
Yep.
and the person leading is credible, or the institution leading are credible, they will have the money that are needed. And I want to use this opportunity to do a call to some of the institutions that I know can lead on such projects. Some publishing houses that have a track record of publishing in local African languages who can take up such initiative. The first one is the African Book Collective, the ABC. You know, my organization, Mona Karachi, we had an interview with them. They are doing a very fantastic work, in terms of promoting the distribution of African books. And they also do have a strong emphasis on books published in African languages. The second institution I have in mind is Biblionef, in South Africa. They create quality children books in various and most of the South African languages. The third one is based in Senegal, and many Senegalese will know it, is Amalion Publishing. They specialize more in academic and scholarly work in African languages. In South Africa, again, we have Nalibali, which I guess you may also know. They promote literacy and storytelling in African languages. We have Baobab Books in Zimbabwe. In Ghana here, we have Sub-Saharan publishers with Mrs. Akos Afori, who is doing also a very good work, by publishing textbook, reference material in local languages. We have the East African educational publishers. They are based in Kenya, if I remember well, and they are doing also a good work. Or Vule Africa publishers in Uganda. What am I trying to say by this? That we have many publishers who have a track record of having a key component of their publishing work, on African languages. They can explore alternative ways of doing, and crowdfunding is one way. Reaching out to private wealthy individual, it's another way. Doing evidence Evidence-based advocacy with policymakers is another way. But we need to change the way of doing things. We can't be doing the same thing and expect a different result. It's witchcraft.
Right.
To have different results, we must do things differently. We must think differently, bring different stakeholders on the table to see how we can get these things done, because we need to do it now, or most languages in Africa are going to continue not just to be endangered, but to disappear. We realized recently there is this institution, they are doing a track of the languages that are spoken in the world and how healthy they are. And most of the time, the languages that are increasingly getting disappearing are from Africa,
Hmm.
because those languages, with time, we see many African children who are no longer able of speaking their languages, their mother languages, because the parents themselves don't speak it, or the parents themselves, even though they speak it, they have been so used to French or the foreign languages that the frequency of them speaking a local language is low, and it makes children not to be familiar with the local language. They can just hear greetings, they can hear greetings, but to have a proper and solid conversation in the local languages, they can't do it.
Hmm.
It's dangerous. It's alarming.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh, and then
They
you've
have to
got
do it.
this pollution of local languages with English, right?
Exactly.
I,
Exactly.
I've never heard a conversation in Tree that I couldn't at least understand what they were talking about, because they would
Yeah.
Mm,
switch between Tree and English, or they'd use
English.
English
Exactly.
Yeah.
words, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
one
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
argue that Tree has already been, I don't want to be too dramatic, but Tree has been destroyed by the infusion of English languages. Nah, that's dramatic to say destroyed, but it's evolved. It's been polluted, let's just say, with English words, right? Are you familiar with the work that Tim Brooks is doing with the Endangered Alphabets Project? That's a
I've heard about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing you should check out too. And for all our listeners out there, sometimes I forget we have listeners when the conversation gets really interesting. But Tim Brooks is a gentleman. He runs the Endangered Alphabets Project, and they do a lot of work around preserving, focusing a lot on written languages, the alphabets, right? They do a lot of work around preserving endangered languages over there. It's a really interesting resource as well. And there's a lot of agencies out there, but I like the approach that you're taking, which is you're saying, no, Africans need to advocate for their own languages. And
Exactly.
I love that. I have a lot of respect for that, because as you were talking before, I was thinking your language and your culture is something that only benefits Africans and can't be appropriated. It can't be, the Chinese can come in and buy up the fishing rights, and the West can come in and purchase the gold mines. Natural resources can be, you know, taken or appropriated.
Practice.
Your culture can't. Your language can't, right? That's something that only Africans are going to benefit from, and therefore only Africans can promote, really. So, Sylvain,
Exactly.
Yeah.
don't let me
And
talk.
yeah, Saka, just to add something to what Christian was saying, when it comes to data, now I believe with my course and everything that I'm doing, and now because I'm more focused on using technology to promote African languages or languages in general, there is an initiative that we are embarking at Open Binacle. And so Open Binacle has a subsidiary called OB Translate.
Mhm.
And Taka, the truth is that we have built a system that has 789 trillion data sets, which means that the system, that the algorithm we have built, is able to translate over 2,900 languages. And most of these languages are African languages.
Mhm.
We need more data sets.
Yep.
However, we have realized that harnessing the power of technology is the way to go.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
And
kind
with
of a
these,
chicken and the egg situation, though, like which came first, because the technology requires data to train it, and so the more data you
exactly.
have, the easier the technology gets. The more technology you get, the more data, the easier it is to collect the data. So there's a snowball effect, a cumulative effect happening.
Exactly. And so that is what we're actually doing. And in addressing the people in the diaspora and their children and everything, we have come up with an initiative to have animation for children in their local languages with transcription in English or whatever language that they want to have it in. However, these are animations that, the children, most especially when they watch, when they visualize things, they are able to keep it. So having these animations in their language, in the local languages for these children will be a plus for them to retain the languages of their mothers and all of that. And so there are so many initiatives on the continent of Africa trying their best to preserve African languages, trying their best to, put African languages on the internet, being able to type in Chi, for instance, in Ebe and all of that, and communicate. These will be able to help us promote and standardize a lot of languages. And so, as my brother was saying, that is in relation to the crowdfunding. These are initiatives that need a lot of funding, and in few years to come, you see that we would have language justice across all languages, because it's not be good to have other language endangered as we are all trying to fight for. Yeah.
I want to go back to the comments here. Where are my comments? Because Ricky's making a few more points here. Ricky Kalu says promoting languages is important, but the formalization process of major languages will accelerate the transformation. South Africa has invested a lot into this and still is not where it is meant to be. Advancing formalization of these languages is key. So basically getting them recognized. And he's also
Yeah.
asking, can you put the names of those publishing houses that you were mentioning? I was trying,
Yes, I'll
as you
do
were
that.
talking, I was trying to like find them and bring up the websites, but it was too quick. I couldn't do it.
I will
But
do that. I
all
will do
right,
that.
yeah, just put them in the comments so people, because I think that would be a really good resource for people.
Yes, yes.
So
So I strongly agree with Kalu, who is recommending the formalization of those languages, because obviously, if there is not a writing system, if there is not writing material like like I say like a codification, of those languages, it makes difficult for users, to even have access to it or even to write it, which is also key and needed. And basically, my main point, which I want anyone following me, through this, is that let's change the way of doing things. We have
yep,
technology, as Sylvain has indicated. Technology is available to accelerate or to amplify the initiatives that are currently being done. We have the economic strength of Africa has also been increased. We have crowdfunding, we have digital, we have a lot of digital way of leveraging or creating, money. So let's not always go or expect things from the government. Like, we need to cut that mindset of being government
Yeah.
dependent, because I believe
Yeah.
that's the main reason why African languages are not moving forward. We expect the government to do it, and if they don't do it, why? Like, what next? So are we going to be watching our languages, being destroyed?
Yeah.
I just
Mhm.
when you mention about the this project, the endangered alphabet project,
mhm.
I just check and I realized that the project at a time launched a Kickstarter, crowdfunding,
Oh yeah,
which
I help
helped. Yes,
I helped promote it.
exactly.
It was like what, like thirty thousand
Exactly.
dollars or something like that.
17,881, which
That
is a lot.
that's just the latest one, right? There's been more.
Exactly.
Yeah, that can go a
Exactly.
long
It
ways.
sh- exactly. It shows what? It shows it shows that people are willing to give.
Yeah,
People
I
are willing to
I
support.
I'd give. I have three kids. I probably could have mentioned this. I have three kids that are Ghanaian by heritage that don't speak Fanti.
Hmm.
Period. They don't
Exactly.
at all. And I mean, neither do I. But I mean, I think I could be forgiven for that. But I find it a tragedy that my kids don't speak Fanti. They should,
Exactly.
but there's not
Exactly.
resources
Now,
out there.
Exactly. Now imagine you see a project in Ghana, for example, you have sub-Saharan publisher who are among one of the top in local languages. Imagine you see a project coming, a crowdfunding project coming from sub-Saharan publisher where they clearly indicate that they want to create a lot of teaching and learning resources around Tree to make them freely accessible, you know, and they need, I don't know, $30,000. Are you
Hmm.
not going to give?
Oh, I'd give. Yeah.
Of
I've
course.
tried to study tree before. The only resource I could find is like this 40-year-old scanned PDF from
Exactly.
the Foreign
Yeah.
Service
Mm.
Institute.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Mm.
It's I couldn't learn tree if I wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
could. I'm making
Exactly.
excuses. But yeah,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
preach it.
Yeah. So
I'm right there with you.
so 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 crowdfunding is ultimately one key way that we need to explore. The fourth way that I will also suggest, is tapping into the power of corporate social responsibility.
Hmm.
Mm. There are a lot of company who have a lot of capital. They want to make projects that will benefit, the community, or that will make them good in the eyes of the nations or the citizens. You know, we can tap publishers or language activists. We can tap into it. For example, as I was saying previously, credibility is key. When we look at the case of the endangered project, why is it that they were able of raising almost $18,000? Because Tim Brooks, he has a long track record. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's
Very
credible.
credible.
People knows
Yeah.
that that is something he's working on. He's credible, and he has also given accountability on how the money was used.
Yep.
People can see the impact
Yep.
of what he's using the money for. So I believe that if publishers together with maybe translation companies sit together, they put together a plan. And by the way, for those who are interested in moving into this, I'm available to join such projects or such initiative, to put together something strong, and then reaching out to local company and pitching this to them, telling them that, listen, your projects you are doing, water borehole, yes, water borehole is good, but there are many who are focusing on that. Why don't you try as a company to be different by engaging into something that will benefit not just the community but the whole country, the whole nation? Give us your corporate social funds, and we can do much more with it. We need to change our approach and change our way of doing things to generate different results. That's basically what I'm trying to push. And not to mention, if I want to go with a fifth point, AI.
Oh
Wow.
boy, you
AI
can't you
technology.
can't
Oh boy.
you can't mention AI with 2 minutes left in the podcast. That's just not fair,
Exactly.
Christian. I'm
Exactly.
sorry, there is not enough time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Thank
it's
you.
coming, and Africa is going to be left out of a lot. African languages are going to be left out unless we can start collecting those data sets, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but I
Yeah.
believe
And we are
things
doing
are.
so.
Yeah, they
Yes,
they
I
are
believe
they
things
are.
are.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe things are changing gradually. Personally, with my team here at Kabod, Kabod Group, we have a language service department where we provide language service in African languages mainly, and we also have a network of African language specialists, and African language teachers to facilitate conversation, events, reflection, and advocacy activity on such topic. And one thing we did recently is to generate more data. We are doing a market survey, on some of this issue, and we really encourage people to go on our website and fill that survey. For those of you who are interested, I can share the link later. But basically, we need data, to be able of having more solid arguments and move from rhetoric to evidence-based, decision-making processes. Yeah, but there is a lot that is currently going on. We are also having a discussion recently with Kowu. Kowu, she's it's an organization that is developing an API to learn Igbo, online using digital tool. We
Interesting.
also have Masakane, who is also doing a lot. We also have deep learning in Daba, who are going to have their conferences here in Accra very soon. Like, a lot is going on. We just have to be consistent, to be
Yep.
strategic, and to always reassess our approach to maximize the impact. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, We are out of time. I mean, I could keep talking. This has been super fascinating, and we've gone off script,
Yeah.
but that's fine by me. I hope it was as interesting to people listening as it was to me. Any closing thoughts, Sylvain?
Okay. Just to reiterate that the promotion and preservation of African languages is our sole responsibility. There's no one coming from outside to come and help us promote our languages. In fact, maybe they might wish we just continue like this. And so in the long run, African languages die. But then it is our sole responsibility to preserve and to promote our own mother tongues using every channel possible. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And for those listening, I'll start taking us out here. But before I let you all go, you folks listening out there, I do want to encourage you, go follow these gentlemen on LinkedIn, to stay up to date with all of the advocacy and the work that they're doing out there. You can find their links directly in the event. Just click on over their profile and make sure that you're following them. Heck, go follow me too, Tucker Johnson, if you if you want to add to your followers. All right, I will take us out. Ladies, gentlemen, chat, we are out of time for today. If you enjoyed this experience, then join us next time in 29 minutes when we're going to be talking about the human in the loop and what that means moving forward in a world that's increasingly run by AI. I appreciate our guests today, Christian and Sylvain. I appreciate my colleagues here at NIMSY Insights doing all of the hard work. I appreciate everybody in our industry who's filling out surveys and responding to our requests for research so that everybody in the industry can benefit. And I appreciate you, the audience, for joining us live today. All of the questions, comments, and criticisms. I look forward to next time. Cheers.